Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go with rapid fire.
Okay, so we're going to do it a little bit differently tonight. I'm going to explain the ground rules tonight. It's called sliding scales. So you'll start with a point total value of 10. You're going to have two different things that you're going to like slide your chips to, basically. It's like I've got to slide some of my chips to this side, or you can slide 0, but then you've got to slide all 10 to the other side. You've got two options that you're going to divide it up between. So, for example, if I asked you if you had a good or a bad day, you might put 7 points on the good and 3 points on the bad, or maybe the opposite for that matter. But that's how it's going to work. So do you understand the ground rules?
I do understand the ground rules.
Okay. It sounds like Henry does as well. Either that or he was saying, I don't get it, but we'll see how this whole thing goes. So we're going to start with this one. Your confidence that Notre Dame will beat either Clemson or USC versus the Irish losing to either Syracuse, Navy, Boston College, or UNLV. So you've got 10, you got to slide some in one direction, some in the other. So which do you have the greater confidence in, that Notre Dame will beat either Clemson or USC, or they will lose one of the other 4 remaining games?
For me, I'm going to put 6 points that they will beat either Clemson or USC, and put the remaining 4 that they would lose to Syracuse, Navy, BC, or UNLV. To me, I think that nothing's a given anymore, but UNLV and Navy are games that I feel very confident that they will win. Syracuse, I feel like they are the better team. It just matters, what kind of team shows up. Do they play how they played against North Carolina and BYU? If they do, I think Syracuse shouldn't be an issue for them. I think it'll be a great game overall, and I think that that's a very kind of even opponent right now for who Notre Dame is currently. And I think BC could present some issues as well. Going against, and then why I have 6 against Clemson or US for Clemson and USC that Notre Dame would beat them is because I really don't feel like that they will lose to Syracuse, Navy, BC, or UNLV, but that there's still the opportunity or the chance. And I think, again, I said this on Tuesday, the most frustrating thing about Notre Dame is they can go out and lose to Navy, but then the next week they could go out and beat USC. And I still think they have a very good chance of beating USC if they play how they're supposed to. And that's really the tale of the story this year is if they play to their potential and get out of their own way, I could see them going 6-0 and beating, obviously USC or Clemson. But then at the same time, I could see them still losing to Navy or Boston College. So that's where I'm going to put it. 6 on one side and 4 on the other.
That's where I've got mine exactly the same as well. I've got my 6 confidence that they would beat either Clemson or USC, and my 4 that they would lose to either Syracuse, Navy, Boston College, or UNLV. Because again, when you've lost to Marshall and this Stanford team, like Stanford traditionally, like 5 years ago, it would have meant something. It wouldn't obviously have been as bad losing to this team. But the Stanford of this season is horrible, and the Marshall of this season has turned out not to be a good team. It's a 500 team, and Stanford's still sub 500. So the fact that they could lose to those two, it does mean they could go out and potentially lose to anybody. But at the same time, there is enough talent that, as you said, if they get their stuff together, I do think they're capable of beating Clemson or USC. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb right now. I just feel slightly more confident that they can beat one of those two teams than they would lose to the other. I mean, 6-4, we're close to 50-50, right? So it's not like we're saying we're completely confident in the win. But, like you look at USC, I think that they're a team that Notre Dame can out physical out there. And I think that, their strength is passing the ball. And I think that Notre Dame can cover them, from a secondary standpoint. So I think that can be a good competitive game. Like, the game that might scare me the most right now is Boston College, just because of what I just said about Marshall and USC. They've already lost to those kind of teams. BC is not good, but because to them especially, it's a rivalry type situation. Boston College, Notre Dame, and you've got the Phil Jurkovec factor coming back in the door. So, like, aren't we just expecting, the way this season has gone, something fluky to happen right off the bat with that anyway? So it can happen. I'm still slightly more confident that they can beat one of those other two teams, but I'm with you. 6 on one, 4 on the other. Okay. How much of the rest of Notre Dame's season should be about the future versus how much should be about this year? Where are you sliding your chips now on this? The future versus now.
So I'm gonna slide 7 to now and 3 to future, just because I think a lot of their future is kind of right now. This team is already kind of considerably young, right? You have 3 running backs who are all going to be back next year. You have a quarterback that obviously has time left, who is going to be competing again for another spot next year. You have wide receivers now folding into the action, getting a lot of experience. You have a very young very young secondary. I think where I would slide let's get some experimental and get some of these younger guys is in the linebacker core, and on the wide receiver side. I think that those are areas where you could really see some development in kind of some of their weaker spots this year. So, but I still think at the same time there's still a lot to play for. There's still a lot of good talent on the team. There's a lot of good opponents coming up, and I still think you can have a very successful season at like an 8-4 clip, or potentially a 9-3 clip if you run the table. Those aren't bad seasons, overall, compared to what they've been in the past, that we're so accustomed to 10-win seasons. I think an 8-4, 9-3 season for a first-time head coach, getting his kind of bearings, that's a good season considering Notre Dame also has the number 1 schedule in the country. Or at least if you don't want to say number 1, top 5, you can make a very, that's a guarantee. So that's where I kind of lie on that. 7 towards still playing for now, and 3 for the future.
Interesting comment Stymie made. The future should involve a new offensive coordinator. So I guess 100% towards now. And I mean, I don't know what they're going to do there. I mean, obviously we know a lot of fans are disgruntled, but I have no idea what they're going to do there. So I guess we have to assume that the current guy is going to be around. I cheated a little bit. I split one of my chips in half. So like you had 7 on now versus 3 for the future. I went 6.5, 3.5, but still weighted to the side you said. Mine is still more now. You can't give up on now because you have to send a message to this team, and you're still trying to figure some things out, as we talked about earlier. You're trying to clean some things up, and cleaning those things up is going to affect your future. So you still have to do that. But that said, with a 3-3 season right now and already on your number 2 quarterback, I would like to see a Steve Angeli package at some point in the future. I would like to see Steve Angeli get on the field for like a series per game, similar to what Tyler Buchner did last year. Now, obviously, his skill set is not to that extreme of Tyler Buchner. He's mobile, but not ultra mobile like him. I would like to see him. I do think you need to start mixing in young guys, and I'm not saying playing young guys and starting young guys en masse, but I do think that you need to get some of those guys on the field. And Anthony says, "Way to put a dark cloud on the topic." It's like just crap all over us and take away all of our hope. I'm sorry. I mean, he's there for a reason. And a lot of people were excited about the fact that he was here. And then you see the first half of the Fiesta Bowl and everybody got even more excited. And then we haven't seen that guy since then. So
I think a lot of people brought up a good point in the chat over the last couple of minutes. And I would Notre Dame has just missed a dominant quarterback. Like Brady Quinn or why is he Jimmy Clausen? Jimmy Clausen, say what you want about him, he still went to the NFL. He was still, a well-known name, and just kind of, he was a good, dominant quarterback, big arm. I just wish, you could. I don't think Ian Book was that. So if anyone wants to say that Ian Book was, this great, Ian Book was a very average to above averge quarterback. He wasn't elite.
He's
wasn't
not even
next
suiting
level
up for the Eagles right now. He's practice squad.
Right. I just want a stud quarterback at Notre Dame. And I think that's every program wants that. But if you're Notre Dame, you should be able to hit on one by now, right? Like you should be able to, you're running through kind of your chances where it's like, well, we've consistently missed. And that's a trait of a school that, doesn't have the presence that Notre Dame does.
I'm just glad that the Phil Jerkovic chirping, because like, this could very easily be like everyone, oh, we should have had Jerkovic, and unfortunately for him, this is not like, I'm not. He has regressed, like he had a nice beginning when he went to Boston College because they let him do some things, but he is literally one of the worst Power 5 quarterbacks in the country right now, and everyone was all upset and raving about him a few years ago and up in arms when he left, and all the gruntledness, Book and Dracovic and everything else, and I just the quarterback recruiting has got to get better, but they've got this guy, CJ Carr, coming in. And
legacy.
And yeah, well, a legacy someplace else, but
Well,
hopefully
like the name is a legacy.
That's right. That's right. Hopefully he's the guy, but as Vince and I were talking about the other day, it can't just be CJ Carr. They have to go out and continue to get high-level quarterbacks. It can't be like, okay, we've got Buckner, now we're going to get, a handful of three-star guys to fill the rest of the roster. We have Wimbush, and we're going to get three-star guys to fill the rest of the roster. It's got to be you've got to keep hitting, pushing for 4- and 5-star quarterback types. And if one of them ends up transferring, they end up transferring, just like Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama or some of these other programs. You got to keep shooting high at that quarterback position. Let really good quarterbacks battle it out in training camp and in fall camp for those starting jobs. And if somebody transfers, so be it. I mean, it's happening across the rest of college football. You can't go from potentially such a high level to a lower level at your quarterback position. They've got to start making better hits and better marks at that quarterback position with their recruiting.
I definitely agree.
Okay. Next question. Your confidence in Notre Dame's running back room versus your concern about the wide receivers room. How do you split your 10 points on this one?
I put 8 points in my confidence in the running back room. I think that is their number one. That's their best offensive position right now, outside of the offensive line. But that's like a whole unit. It's hard to justify a whole unit. But position wise, they have 3 running backs that could be starters at any Power 5 school, in my opinion. They all do a lot of things well. They all do a variation of things. Like Estime, obviously big power runner, but he's still good on his feet. He can get the little twinkle toes if he needs to. I like the speed and elusiveness that Diggs has in the hole. He's able to get up to speed quick and then also get back up to speed quick, if that makes sense. Like he can make a cut and get back up to full speed very quickly again. And then obviously, Tyree's ability, he's more the pass catching, using him out of the backfield more, being able to, he runs well. So I just, their running back room is very solid. And I think they're all happy, with the harmony and the what they can kind of, how they play off of each other. Right. And the fact that they can all kind of get the touches they need and succeed. And then, it's very clear that there is a lot of concern with the wide receiver room and just getting, I just think that they just need like a refresh. If it were me and wide receiver, I would just almost be okay with putting out a lot of the young guys at this point and just letting them kind of their athleticism.
There aren't that many young guys. So it's basically Merriweather,
Right, but just, doing something to get new bodies in there. I just feel like the people now, they're not really, they haven't shown anything, right? Like there's no one in there that's like, wow, you have consistently shown that you're able to produce at wide receiver. So I'm going 8 running backs, 2 wide receivers.
Exactly the same. But if Tobias Merriweather starts playing more and is involved in the game plan and producing more, I can get this to, close to even, maybe 5-5 or even 6 to the running backs and 4 to the wide receivers. It really depends on that at this point. We saw great potential with Tobias Merriweather. How much of the full offense is he really, like how many full plays can he go without, one defense is knowing every time he runs out on the field, or 80% of the time he runs out on the field, he's going to be thrown to. That gets pretty easy to figure out pretty soon, especially after watching film from last week. But if somehow Tobias Merriweather starts becoming a consistent playmaker, I think it changes the entirety of the offense. And then you really do have a chance to beat one of those, Clemson or USC like we were talking about. But full confidence in the running backs for everything that you said. It's great position of strength right now. Okay, Jess. Speaking of like Merriweather, this is kind of tied into that. We've heard a lot about players needing to earn more trust in practice to get more game day playing time. So after a player gets game time and shows what he can or can't do there, how much stock needs to be put in actual game time that he has versus practice time in determining future playing time?
The hard thing is with this kind of question is, practice time, there's 5 days of it during the week. So the sample size is much larger. So if you're consistently doing it wrong in practice day after day after day, then it's really hard to have the trust in you to do it. And then you get into the game and your sample size is so small and you might hit, on one of those 4 or 5 plays that you're in, but it's because your sample size is so small, right? And so I take more stock in practice, and so I'm going to put 6.5 on practice and 3.5 in the game, because there's something said for people who are just gamers, right? They for some reason they can show up, and that's when they're the best, because that's when the pressure's on, and it's almost like practice is too boring for them, or they don't have the concentration to do it at practice, but when they know everything's on the line, they can do it. But because of what I'm saying, the sample size, you have to put weight into it for that reason. And so if you're consistently showing 4 or 5 days a week that you can't do it, then that's why you're getting those small chances, because you have shown you can do it, but you're consistently showing that you're not. If that it's kind of hard to put into words, but that's where I'm coming from. So 6.5 and 3.5.
Oh, I get what you're saying, because you're getting maybe 10 snaps on game day, but you're getting
probably 100 snaps throughout the week.
At least 100 snaps during the week, maybe. Or, even if it's 50 snaps during the week, it's still a lot more than what you're getting on game day. But I guess what I'm saying is, if you're proving it on game day and then you go to practice and, isn't practice supposed to be about making mistakes and figuring out how to learn? Like, as long as you're not making the exact same mistake over and over and over again, like maybe you make a mistake and then you get something figured out, but then doing something else, maybe you make a mistake. So
it also depends on like what kind of mistake it is. Like if
exactly,
what the route is, but if you're not lining up on the hash when you're supposed to be lining up on the numbers, then it's like, the whole concept of where the play is kind of supposed to be going gets screwed up at that point.
Yeah. And I guess once you start showing up on game day, though, if you're proving that you can do it and you're not having game day screw ups, then I do think at least a little bit more weight needs to be put there. So I give it, what'd you say? Did you say 6 and 4?
I did 6.5, 3.5.
6.5, 3.5. I think I'm 6 and 4 toward game. Because again, we're talking about someone who's already playing in the games, not like he has to rely solely on practice to get to the games. He's playing in games. He's doing okay in games. Maybe practice, he's not quite perfect yet. So I flipped it around the other way a little bit. Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick. Where are you going here?
5 and 5. I'm equal. I think that they are the best. They are best when in harmony, right? I think the whole reason Tom got going is because of Bill, but the longevity of Bill is only because of Tom. And so I think that those two are a split 50-50. I think it's in that one, it's like the chicken or the egg, in my opinion. But like I said, Tom got good because of the system he was in that Bill Belichick brought him up in, but they had the longevity and all of the Super Bowls and the continued success because Tom's dedication to just being good. And so Bill really,
because they were together.
Though. Exactly. So that's what I'm going 5 and 5 right down the middle.
Yeah. I slanted a little bit more toward Brady. I go 6 and 4 because of the fact that he was able to go to Tampa Bay and win a Super Bowl right away with a guy who is already not coaching now, Bruce Arians. I think it shows who was running the show. down there. Now, all this latest stuff, there's just so much drama now that's starting to follow Tom Brady. It's insane. I mean, Bill Belichick, for what he's got to work with in terms of a quarterback right now, he keeps plugging away and he's trying. I wonder how long he keeps plugging away. But I thought they'd be a little bit better. This Bailey Zappi kid, though, he might end up being the answer that nobody knew they needed. The way it's worked out so far.
I still like Mac Jones. I think they're kind of having issues defensively this year compared to, where they've been in the past. That good solid defense, no matter your quarterback. You gotta. I think I saw a stat the other day, like the last 5 Super Bowls, the defenses have ranked in the top like 7 or 8. Like you still have to have a solid defense if you want to go all the way. And I think that's kind of hurting New England as well. And obviously Mac Jones getting hurt. I still think Mac Jones can be a really good quarterback. So it'd be interesting to see, because I don't think Bill Belichick is afraid to play the guy who's got the hot hand and who's winning, because that's ultimately, what it comes down to. So it's like, when do you potentially reintroduce Mac Jones? Do you ride Bailey Zappi until he just kind of fizzles out? And if that doesn't happen, if he never does fizzle out, then you're facing kind of a much larger problem or situation at that point.
Yep. Okay, next question. How much you love your favorite teams versus how much you hate their biggest rivals?
That's a good question. This one's easy for the Cowboys, because the Cowboys have owned their rivals in their division pretty much the last 5 or 6 years. So
that's true.
For the Cowboys, I'm gonna go like 8-2, just because I really hate Eagles fans. I think they're kind of the worst out there. When it comes to Notre Dame, though, I would say again, I'm up there because Notre Dame has been pretty successful in their rival games of recent, right? And so again, I'm gonna go probably 8-2. I don't really get too caught up in the rivalry thing. As long as there's winning, that's the thing that I'm mainly concerned about. The rivalry is just like an extra tag kind of on it for me.
Yeah, I'm 9-1. 9 to my favorite team, 1 for the rivals. I mean, otherwise, if you have more hate for your rivals than you have, love or whatever for your favorite team, it's what I call Purdue syndrome or Kansas State University syndrome. It's like, if more of your energy is focused on the other team than your team, it is misplaced. Just like Purdue fans, I think, exert just as much, if not more, energy sometimes on hating Indiana, or when Purdue and Notre Dame used to play football all the time, it was the same thing. They had like just as much hate for Notre Dame football and other sports where they were playing as they did for their own team. And it's the same with Kansas State University and Kansas. It's like they spend so much time throwing hate at the other team. They're much more worried about that than they are actually cheering for their own team most of the time. So I'm 9 for my team, 1 for the rivals. I don't have enough time to exert that much energy on the others unless they get to the playoffs. Now, if they get to the playoffs, then
it's a different story.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. All right, last one. How much do you consider yourself a college football fan versus just a football fan in general?
Oh, so we're not even considering NFL. It's just the whole football.
That's part of like football fan. Like, okay. So you've got just college football, or I'm a football fan.
I'm
a football fan is factored in, the NFL is factored into I'm a football fan, not just a college football.
10-0. I am a football fan just in general. I think that both levels provide, I just can't understand the people who are, I just watch NFL only, or I just watch college only. I think that's kind of what you're getting at with this question, now that you've kind of explained it a little bit. So, that's like I said, I am just a football fan in general. And I know there's people who are just college fans, and there's people like, I'm just an NFL fan for different reasons. A lot of college people say, well, it just seems more natural. The NFL are guys, are just playing for the money. And then there's the people in the NFL who are, college is amateur, and you just don't see as many mistakes. It's a cleaner product in the NFL. So for me, it's just I'm a football fan in general. And I think if I broke down, I would actually lean a little bit more towards the NFL. It'd be like 5.5 to 4.5
Right.
if it were that scale. But
With
that's where
Notre
I'm
Dame
coming from.
heavily weighting your college side of the equation, basically.
Right. Yeah. There's just really no other college team that I care for outside of
Yeah.
Notre Dame,
A
unless
lot
it's
of
just a
people, and I'm not
good
surprised a
game.
lot of people here are like down on the NFL. We see them kind of chiming in because this is, we're more geared obviously toward Notre Dame in college anyway. But I've just always like it hasn't mattered to me. NFL, college, I just like to watch good football. Like as far as college goes, like I'll watch a top 25 matchup or Notre Dame. Obviously, I want to see good football. And now there's bad football in the NFL, but you're also watching professionals out there. And just like I grew up watching both, and I actually grew up watching predominantly more NFL than college because of where I lived. I didn't live in this area, so I didn't have Notre Dame on every day like everyone has around the country with the NBC contract and all that. So, I'm old enough to not have that. But like I just like to kick back, like one, it's hard to watch other college games, unless like it's a night game, like unless Notre Dame is playing a night game, because covering Notre Dame, that consumes a huge chunk of the day. So you don't get to watch quite as much. Whereas like Sunday gets here, man, I just want to kick back. I've got my Sunday ticket. I'm watching the NFL. I'll flip it around, watch whatever is on there. So I just consider I'm basically nine on football. And again, I'm not saying I'm one as a college football fan. I consider myself a football fan, which factors in both college and the NFL and even high school for that matter, if it's a good game.
Yeah,
So
the number one thing that I think makes me a football fan is I just like seeing the evolution of the game, and it's never being played the same year. You got to be able to adapt, and that's what I like to see. What are these people? What are these guys' new brilliant schemes? What are they doing to kind of change the way that we look at football? Like this year, you see a lot of that kind of slot fade where you got a wide receiver. It's the favorite route this year. NFL guys are using. You got guys, wide receiver in the slot that's fading towards the sideline. And that's just, it's just interesting to see what the new wrinkles are. And that's why I like football. It's just, it's constantly changing. There's more things that are changing per year, in my opinion. And, Brian NY asked if Notre Dame was 5-1, would it make you, the success doesn't really matter. It's just
no,
quality
it
and
has
good
nothing to do with
football
this year.
games.
It's just like football, in general. Yep. Good
I'll
games.
watch every week. If the Cowboys have sucked before, more so recently
That's, I
than
mean,
Notre Dame
I've
has,
watched
and
a
I'll
lot
watch.
of bad, both Notre Dame and Dallas Cowboys
Right, I'm
football
still
every
showing
game
up
over the years.
every week, and that's because I love football, and obviously because I enjoy. Those are the teams that I like to watch the most. I get the most. I'll say this: I get the most into the Cowboys and the most upset about the Cowboys because at the end of the day, they're professionals and they get paid large
Yes,
sums of money. And
right.
these college guys, they're still amateurs. They still have a lot going on. They're still worrying about their girlfriend that was mad at them, and there's just so much more that factors in to being a college student compared to being an NFL where that's solely your job. And so that's why I get a little bit more invested just because of, the status. I understand and have more acceptance for errors at the college level.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I do get more upset at the pro guys than the college guys. The college guys are still trying to figure things out, whereas the pro guys are getting paid a lot of money to be out there. So, all right, well, that's going to do it for today. Great stuff as always, Jess. Vince and I will be here Saturday morning. IB countdown to kickoff, 10 o'clock. We will have the show, so that'll be our our next full show.